Hello everyone. Good morning and welcome to another exciting session on Unacademy CAT-alyst. In today's session, we are going to try to answer one very important question which is there in the minds of thousands of CAT aspirants. Should I attempt the LR or the DI questions first in section B of my paper? A good question. Probably you are looking for the answer, and that's what I'm going to discuss in the next 20 minutes. So, as always, the first thing that I'm going to ask you is please give me 10 seconds to make sure that I'm streaming live before we get started with today's session. Okay, I think we are streaming live and we are good to start. So, I am Parikshit, your LRDI expert on the Unacademy platform. Let's get started with today's session. So what should I attempt first, LR or DI, is what we are going to answer in the next 15 minutes of our discussion. Okay, so as you are aware, LRDI section is going to be of 40 minutes, right? LRDI section is going to be of 40 minutes. Now 40 minutes, how many LR and how many DI questions are we expecting? Okay, 40 minutes. Now, if you look at the last 3-year pattern since 2016, 17, 18, 19, last 3-4 year pattern, right? You would see that the recent years, the distinction between LR and DI has actually reduced. It is very difficult to classify a caselet as a pure LR caselet or a pure DI caselet, right? But having said that, there are still some caselets which can be classified as traditional DI or traditional LR sets. Now think about it. I am assuming that the CAT pattern this year will also be same as the last 3 years. So if that were to hold true, we are assuming that in 40 minutes, all experts are predicting that out of the 40 minutes, we'll have 5 to 6 sets. 5 to 6 sets. So if there are 5 to 6 sets in your LRDI section, right? So how many questions are we looking at? Somewhere around 23 to 24 questions is what we are looking at. Now think about it. Out of the 5 to 6 sets, around 4 sets should be from LR. If we go with the last 3 to 4 year pattern, if you look at the last 3 to 4 year pattern, the major focus has been on LR, logical reasoning, and the remaining 2 sets will be on DI. Now this is based on what? What is the basis for this assumption? The basis for this assumption is last 3-year papers, last 3-year pattern, that is the basis of our assumption and analysis. Okay. Now in LR and DI, this is what the focus is gonna be. Okay. Now having said that, the first thing, some of you are comfortable with LR and some of you are comfortable with DI. So probably some of you would like to attempt LR first. Okay, that's perfect. That's at an individual level. But having been teaching students for the last 7-8 years, I must tell you my observations. And my observations is, let's try to think about it. Let's have a very logical analysis. When you think about LR and DI, let's try to classify DI. When I talk about DI, you know what? DI is basically traditional sets. Traditional data interpretation sets. Traditional sets. And when you talk about LR, I will classify it again into 2 parts. One is traditional LR. I'll tell you what do I mean by that. And one is puzzles. The other is puzzles. Okay. Now think about it. Traditional DI sets, what do I mean? These are basically sets on pie charts, Venn diagrams, a bar diagram, a games and tournaments, a truth teller, a soothsayer, a cube. So these are basically traditional DI sets. Some charts, so basically chart-based questions. So it could be any chart-based questions, a pie chart, a bar diagram, a scatter plot, a time and speed graph, but it is based on a chart. Now think about it. If you have been solving your mocks, right? If you have been giving a lot of mocks, if you have been practicing hard, you know what? The scope to make a lot of questions, there are not too many questions. You cannot change the very basis. The pattern remains the same in chart based questions. When I say pattern remains the same, what do I mean? Probably they will ask you what is the percentage increase or at least, at most type questions, or they will ask you a DI games and tournaments questions. So you know what? The ability to actually change the type of question is not there much. There is not much scope for too many varieties. So here I might safely conclude that the variety is less. So if you have practiced, let's say 300 DI caselets till today, or probably even 200 DI caselets till today, there is a very, very high chance that one of them or at least something similar might turn up on your exam day. Because if it's a pie chart, it will continue to remain a pie chart, right? They cannot change it. If it is based on, let's say, a percentage growth, it will be a percentage growth. There is not much scope to change it. What do I mean? I mean these are sets you are well aware of. These are sets which you are well aware of. So what should you do? If you look at data, if you look at my experience over the last 7-8 years speaking to students, they always feel that these are the kind of questions that people are generally comfortable with. If you have been preparing, these are the sets you are comfortable with, and hence a very strong suggestion would be to attempt such DI caselets at the beginning. Now, when I say attempt such DI caselets at the beginning, how do you decide? It is very important that you look at all the 5 or 6 caselets that are appearing on your exam day. If you have looked at my previous video, I keep referring to you the screen that will appear on November 29. How will the screen look like in your DILR section? You know what? The screen will look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the question numbers. 5, 6 and so on, and 9 and so on. So what you are going to do? You appear on this set. By default, you land on set number 1. So what you need to do is definitely make sure you click on 5 and then you click on set 9 and have a look at all the questions. And make sure that you actually find out the traditional DI sets first. Probably it is the very last set in your exam, the very last set, and attempt that particular set first. Very, very, very important, because if you get the first set correct, your confidence level will increase. And trust me, if your confidence level increases, you will be able to do well in the remaining 20-25 minutes of your exam as well. So definitely look for the traditional sets in the first 1 minute of your exam. So moment the screen appears, you just have a glance at the questions, go to the next set, have a glance, pick up the traditional DI set and solve it. Now there is a caveat here. If you have been looking at the last few year papers, right, there have been at least 3-4 times when a DI set is highly calculation intensive. You need to do a lot of calculations to arrive at the answers. Here you need to be careful. You need to take a call whether you will actually solve this DI set first. No doubt you can get the answer, but is it worth spending 15 minutes on the DI set because it is very calculation intensive, and you know what? You have not even looked at the other sets. Here you are going to take a smart choice. So one way to take a smart choice at this point would be to look at the answer options. Look at the questions and look at the answer options. So assuming that there are 4 questions, let's say this is set 1 and there are 4 questions. Just solve that particular question or questions where the answer options are far enough. Let's say in question number 2, answer options are far enough. What does it mean? It means even though it is calculation intensive, there is a lot of scope to do approximations. And hence attempt, let's say question 2 and question 4 has a wide variety in the answer option. Please make sure that you attempt it and go to the next set. The other thing that you need to know is question number 3 and 5, 3 and 1. You know what? Even though you did not do it, you know that you can solve it, but it will take a bit of time. So what do? You mark it for review. So that in the last 5-6 minutes Okay, once you have done the remaining questions, the last 5-6 minutes are remaining, you can come back and attempt these two particular questions, because at the end of the day they will fetch you 6 marks. They will fetch you 6 marks, and you know what, 6 to 9 marks probably will be around 5 to 6 percentile. A 90 percentile can become a 97, 98 percentile if you can get 2 more questions correct. So very important that you solve the traditional DI sets first. And an assumption I am making here is you are exposed, you have practiced all the different types of DI sets. When I say all different types, I mean a spider web, I mean a 3D caselet, I mean a roots and networks caselet. So every different type of DI caselet you have practiced, and you are ready to attempt it in the first go during your exam. That's my assumption, because I believe all of you are working really hard these last few days. Okay, that answers my first part of the question. Okay, I need to solve DI first. I need to solve DI first. Okay, DI and LR, which should I solve first? I need to solve DI first. Second, what type of LR questions will you pick up next? What type of LR questions will you pick up next? So LR, again, I will divide it into two types: traditional LR and puzzles. Traditional LR and puzzles. What do I mean by traditional LR? Traditional LR basically means questions on, let's say, arrangements, okay? Arrangements. Then you know what? Linear and circular arrangements, distributions, Venn diagrams, probably such questions, Venn diagrams. It is a set probably which you have come across before, Please attempt such questions next. Why? Because your brain already has a lot of idea. It has already been exposed and you have practiced such questions before. So please make sure that in round 2, if I may call it round 2, attempt this traditional LR sets second. Okay? What about puzzles? What actually are puzzles is the next question. Puzzles is anything which probably you have not come across. It could be a man. If you have looked at the CAT 2018 and 19 papers, there are questions like a man goes to the ATM. He tries to enter 4 pins. So basically, what am I trying to say? I am trying to say that these are questions which you have actually come across for the first time, and they cannot be categorized into any specific chapter in LR. When I say specific chapter, I mean syllogisms. As I keep repeating, linear arrangement, circular arrangement, distribution, arrangements, truth pairs, if-then conditions, cubes, all these are traditional. Anything which you have seen in the book, practiced before, is a traditional set. Something which you have not practiced will fall under puzzles. Now, a lot of people, trust me, 80% of the CAT aspirants find these puzzles really difficult, and they don't understand how to do it. That's point 1. The second point is, in these puzzles, look at the length. If these puzzles are, let's say, half a paragraph, okay, you know what? Without spending 4 or 5 minutes, you will not know whether you will get the answer for this puzzles or not. Hence, it will be highly risky if you attempt these puzzles at the very start. It will be highly risky because you need to spend 4 to 5 minutes to be able to understand whether you will come up with a solution or you cannot get the answer. That is not true for a traditional LR set, where you know how to draw the diagram, how to do a roots and networks questions. You have practiced thousands of them. So this doesn't hold true here. Here you already know how to solve it. Hence, traditional LR should be your next focus. So if I were to summarize this, DI comes first, then you will have the traditional LR sets, and then you will have the puzzles. Now, this brings me to the next question. Okay, if I am prioritizing puzzles at the very end, does it mean that these last 20 days I should focus more on DI and traditional LR sets and leave out the puzzles? No. Why? Especially if you look at, let's say, CAT 2017. If you were to look at, let's say, CAT 2017, the problem was almost every question that came in the paper was a puzzle. So you cannot be leaving out the DI and traditional LR and say, okay, I don't want to solve puzzles. I will solve DI and traditional LR. There were none of them. There were none of them. So you should also be prepared to face a scenario where entire CAT 2020 paper is based on puzzles. Is based on puzzles. If the entire paper is based on puzzles, okay, the question is, how do I select which puzzle to attempt first? How do I select which puzzle to attempt first? Okay, at this point of time, it is an easy answer. It is an easy answer because it will be determined by the lengthiness. How much data is there? How much conditions is there, right? If all the questions happen to be puzzles, just look at how lengthy are they. How lengthy are they? If they are, let's say, just 3 or 4 lines, let's say as an example, just 3 or 4 lines. You know what? I'm not saying this is going to be easy. I'm not saying 3 or 4 lines is going to be easy. But the good part is, if you attempt this particular puzzle first, something which carries only 3 or 4 lines, the good part will be at the end of probably 3 minutes or 4 minutes. You know what? At the end of 3 or 4 minutes, you will realize whether you are able to solve the puzzle or you are not able to solve the puzzle. On the contrary, imagine 8 to 9 conditions. You need at least 6 to 7 minutes to understand whether you are able to solve the set or you cannot solve it correctly. So I would say it is an art. It is actually an art. You know what? To leave out a question, to figure out that you can't solve. Art to figure out that you can't solve. You can't solve. You can't solve. When I say everyone can figure out, right? But you know what? I'm talking about figure out in the least possible time. Trust me, that's the thing that's going to make a difference between a 99 percentiler and a 70 percentiler. Someone will say at the end of 15 minutes, I'm not able to do. Someone will say at the end of 3 or 4 minutes, I'm not able to do. So you should fall in this category. It's perfectly fine, not able to solve a puzzle. So definitely take up those puzzles which just has 3 or 4 liners, because at least at the end of 3 or 4 minutes, you will be able to determine whether you can solve the puzzle or you can leave out the puzzle, right? But even before you leave out the puzzle, you decide to leave this puzzle. Let's say you are not able to solve. Definitely look at all the 4 questions underneath it first. Definitely. Before you leave any puzzle, look at the questions. Look at the questions. Why? Because many a times, probably you have solved half of it. You know what? There were 10 people, you figured out A, B and C, the position of A, B and C. There were totally 10 people, but you figured out the position of only A, B, C, and you are not able to figure out the remaining 7. You know what? If you are lucky enough, there might be a question, the very last question of the set, which talks about A, At this point, it will be a crime. It will be a crime if you do not pick that answer. Why? Because you have already figured out A. So it's very, very, very important that even if you have done midway, if you have solved the puzzle midway, go back to the questions, read the questions and see if there are any questions which deals or which comes from the part that you have already solved. If yes, pick that particular question before you decide to move to the next. Very, very, very important, and I cannot stress how important is this. Trust me, 1, 2 or 3 questions at the most, and it's gonna decide 99 versus a 90 percentiler. So do not miss out on the small points, but these are smart points which you need to focus on. Okay, now we are 20 days remaining. Now how many days are remaining? 20 days are remaining. I told you probably 4-5 things in this last 15 minutes. It will be impossible to practice all of them directly in your CAT. So these last 20 days that we have, right? Whatever I talked about, practice in the mocks. Apply it and practice in the mocks. Practice these techniques in the mocks that you will give. Probably you will give another 3-4 mocks in this last 20 days. Definitely apply these techniques. It will work for 95% of the people. For remaining 5%, it might be you are not good in DI. You are good in LR. Fine, you don't follow the strategy that we just spoke about because your strength lies somewhere else. But what I told you is for the general population, 90% of the crowd, 90% of CAT aspirants, the techniques that I just told you will work. If you happen to be in the 10%, figure out if I am in the 10%, nothing wrong about it. Just that for you, you need to follow a different strategy. Did I make sense? Any question that you wish to ask at this point of time? Any question that you might wish to ask at this point of time? So, what should I attempt? LR or DI? Answer is clearly it should be a traditional DI set that you should pick up first. Traditional DI, then a traditional LR set followed by a puzzle. A puzzle is a question where there is some event, there is something, and you have never solved such a question before, right? So that should be the last category. That should be the last category. Anything that you wish to ask before we break? Okay? Okay then, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have liked the session, it will be a humble request from my end to please like the video, and that motivates us to make more and more videos. So till the next time, till tomorrow morning 10:30 a.m. I come out with the session every day 10:30 a.m. in the morning. Till tomorrow morning 10:30 a.m. Goodbye and stay safe. Thank you.